Hey everyone, David Geisler here with NGIM. Tonight we're continuing our talk from last week, Voting Christian Values. Our NGIM staff joining us tonight are Thomas McCuddy, Director of Norm Geisler Institute. We're privileged tonight to have a few special guests with us, one of whom is Dr. Harold Felder, who is a former atheist and NASA software engineer. After becoming a believer and being exposed to the truth of Christianity, he has dedicated his life to sharing that truth with others. He has an undergraduate degree in computer science and both a master and a doctorate degree in apologetics from Southern Evangelical Seminary. Dr. Felder has articles published in a scholarly journal on the topic of racism in the Bible. He is also author of the African American Guide to the Bible, which deals with the inspiration of Scripture, the Black presence in the Bible and racism, and the unity of man. That's a lot. He is also the founder of Giving and Answer Ministry. And to learn more, you can go to www.givingandanswer.org, which focuses on giving evidence for the Christian faith. He speaks at churches and at various apologetic conferences. He currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina with his wife and their 4 children. Dr. Felder, great to have you with us tonight. Yeah.
Looking forward to tonight.
Yeah. Our other special guests, back for the second time on our show, are Devin and Melissa Pellew. Together, they co-host a weekly podcast, Theology Matters with the Pellews, where they discuss various theological and apologetic topics with one another or with apologetic specialists. For example, previously they've interviewed guests like Jay Richards, Ken Samples, Paul Copan, my father, Norm Geisler, J. Warner Wallace, Stephen Meyer, and others since starting the show in 2012. And they're also co-chapter directors for Ratio Christi at Winthrop University and York Technical College in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Now, Melissa has been a pro-life activist since 2006 through various means, from doing training on pro-life apologetics and leading and coordinating 40 Days of Life campaigns. Devin is a certified apologetic instructor with Cross Examine Ministries, that's Frank Turk's organization. He has been teaching in churches, youth and college groups, and at various ministry events on apologetics and theology for the last 14 years. That's a long time, Devin. And has spoken at SES National Conference on Christian Apologetics. He also teaches a weekly apologetic and theological class at Kershaw Correction Institute as part of the Prison to Society faith-based programs. Wow, you guys are really busy. Great to have you on the program tonight, both of you. Devin and Melissa.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah. So tonight we want to invite all of you to listen and join in thinking through some of the main concerns that we as Christians should be concerned about as we look to participate in government by voting in the next week, actually less than a week now, right? So let me just offer a little perspective to begin with to help us in our discussion. Jesus taught in Mark 12:17 that we are to give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to give to God what is God's. Now, some of you may know this. My father, Dr. Norman Geisler, taught that in a democracy, we not only have an opportunity to determine who Caesar is, but also to have a moral responsibility to God as followers of Christ to elect the best Caesar possible. Now, the first thing I'd like us to think about is how the United States got their religious liberties in the first place. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are all based, as many of you know, on Christian morals and the acceptance of a belief in a theistic God. So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is what happens in our culture when more and more Americans categorize themselves as having no religious views. What then might happen to these liberties? So let me open the discussion by asking this specifically. In the United States, we have a presidential election coming up next week. I just want to ask anyone who wants to give me some feedback on this question. Are we in danger of losing any religious freedoms in this election in particular? And if so, why? So maybe I'll start with Dr. Felder. Would you like to give us some feedback on that?
Yeah, I'm really concerned because as I see what's going on in the news around us, and I see how the media and how the tech giants have moved to censor conservative voices. Now, in my personal opinion, I think this is a dry run for censoring Christians. Now, if they can censor conservative voices, then it's nothing to censor Christians. I mean, the template is already out there. Right. And if they can get away with doing it now, they would be empowered to do it even more so. And it would be under the guise of things like hate speech, which is what they're saying now. You know, we have to censor conservative because it's hate speech. Everything would be considered hate speech. If you're pro-life, it'll be hate speech. If you're pro-gender, scientific gender identity, it would be hate speech. Anything that's pro-Christian will be hate speech. But not only that, I also think that this whole COVID thing is a dry run for cracking down on the churches as well. I mean, when the government can tell you when and when you cannot assemble, I mean, now pretty much where everybody's saying, oh, okay, well, we agree now, it's a pandemic. But then that just opens up the door for them to use other reasons in order to prevent us from gathering and worshiping together. So I think there's a lot at stake in this election. Those are just two of the things that come to mind.
Right, very good. Devin and Melissa.
Yes, I completely agree with Dr. Felder on his points, very great points. As you know, Devin and I we do full-time ministry at a secular university. So when we're talking about freedom of religion and freedom of expression of biblical truth, that is going to be an issue with the promotion of.
I think we're having trouble with your microphone.
Okay, sorry about that. Is this better?
I think so. Try it again.
Okay. Let's see.
Yes.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. Yeah. With promotion, with working on a secular university in ministry and promoting biblical truth amongst the student body, these biblical truths would be considered, like Dr. Felder said, a violation of.
Yeah, you know what? We're still having trouble, Melissa.
Okay, is it? Okay, go right ahead. We'll work on it.
Okay. It seems that many of those who would not even consider themselves as having a religious perspective are not really happy with the slide in American society from traditional Christian values. In other words, I've been talking to, for example, my neighbor who's an agnostic, and just in the last week, and he doesn't like the direction that the left is taking our country in general. And he was raised a very strong Democrat in New York, and a lot of his family is Democrat, and he's really concerned about some of the religious liberties and freedoms that we have that somehow we could be losing in this election. listen to some of these statistics since 1962. We talked about this in previous live streams, that since 1962, here are some things that have changed. Teen pregnancy is up 400%. Sexual activity among 15-year-olds is almost up 1,000%. Teen arrests for aggregated assault is up over 300%. Teens arrested from rape up from 240 a year to more than 350. Violent crime up 660%. And on and on and on. I can list a whole number of statistics. But with these statistics in mind, I'd like to hear our guest's opinion on what has changed, in their opinion, both in the Democrat and the Republican Party since maybe the time of President Jimmy Carter. And I know that's kind of a lot to think about, but maybe just in general, like, what do you think has changed? Let's start with you, Dr. Felder. What has changed in both the Democrat and the Republican Party from your perspective?
Well, so I go back a while, but I didn't do a whole lot of politicking until I actually was an adult. But okay. I have noticed a couple of things, and I've noticed, even as an atheist, I started to notice these things, that there is a moral slide in our country. Because what happens is that Hollywood influences our nation to the point where the values that Hollywood portray tend to be the values that America pick up on.
Yeah. And
part of that is moral relativism, and the fact that there is no absolute right and wrong. Now, when I first started going to school, there was the 10 Commandments. There was a standard of right and wrong. I knew that even if my teacher didn't catch me doing something, now I wasn't an atheist when I was in elementary school and junior high school, but I knew that even if the teachers didn't catch me, I knew that there was a standard above my teachers to which I was held accountable to. And if you remove God as the ultimate standard, then there is no standard, then all things are permissible. So then you have governments or political parties actually, as part of their platform, trying to bring more people in, actually going for people who are what we would consider immoral from a biblical perspective. Okay. So then these things become normalized. And as they become normalized, then people become more accepting of them. The parties start to embrace them. And it's like a vicious cycle.
Very good. And Devin, Melissa, would you like to give us some feedback on?
Okay. Can you guys hear us now?
I'm not sure. Go try. Keep trying.
Okay. Testing. Stop. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. We're still having trouble with your microphone. I don't know why.
It was I would say with the sexual revolution that we experienced.
There you go.
Okay. With the sexual revolution, we experienced a shift in values in terms of sex became somewhat our God in our culture. And right. So the government became a tool through different policies to promote sexual liberation in a sense. And so there, with like Dr. Felder stated, with the morals, there goes the culture and society. So when a platform of liberalism can incorporate the sexual revolution into what it stands for and its policies, then that just becomes the way of the land for those who want that to be a part of our society. And that's how people will tend, who lean that way will tend to vote.
Yes, yeah, very good. I'm not sure if our listeners know this, but I'm sure you all know this, my guess, that my father taught a Christian ethical principle called graded absolutes. Are you familiar with that term?
I was one of his students when he taught that.
Okay. Now, I think it would be helpful in our discussion to explain what it is and then we can ask, the specific questions. So maybe Dr. Felder, how would you describe graded absolutes? What
So
is?
that there are levels of, there are degrees of, and he uses the example of the fact that in hell there are different levels of punishment, and that there are different levels of reward in heaven. So there are different levels of right and wrong. Now, right and wrong, there are, right and wrong is right and wrong, but there are different levels of right and wrong. For instance, Jesus even mentioned that people committing greater sins. To lie to someone is a sin, but to murder them is a greater sin. So then there are greater sins and lesser sins.
Right.
In a nutshell, that's the way I would put it.
Okay, so here's my question for anyone who would like to answer this. How should Christians apply this principle, this biblical principle, in determining what values we should try to promote, which will help us to decide then who we should vote for that will promote these Christian values in our government? Do you see the sequence here? We have to decide, first of all, what are the values we should try to promote as followers of Christ? And then from that, then decide who then should we vote for to promote these Christian values. And maybe we can even think in terms of parties, like does one party tend to promote certain values and another party tend to promote other values? Think from that perspective.
Yeah. I remember your father had taught me that the most important and basic right was the right to life, and without a right to life, no other rights really mattered at all. And so I see a lot of evangelical leaders, who I respect, but they almost draw a moral equivalence between, President Trump being rude on Twitter, or saying, some things maybe we all would agree he probably shouldn't say, but almost as though that is as bad as a witness as voting for a party who has abortion on their platform.
Right.
And I think, as you look at the graded absolute, view, that it's very clear there are some things that are worse than others. And one thing I think that's been helpful to just remind people is policies over personality. Donald Trump may not have the greatest personality. I think we could all agree with that. Some of the things he says is crass and rude, but maybe compare that to more of a Mike Pence, who embodies the policies and also has a kind demeanor.
Right.
I would like to add to that if I can.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I speak a lot about is slavery.
Yeah.
And one of the points that I make about slavery is that slavery is wrong because man is made in the image of God. So abortion is wrong for the same reason that slavery is wrong, is because we're all made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Now, I have conversations with some of my, friends who are a little left-leaning. And when I bring up the conversation of abortion being this nation's greatest sin, they will say to me, that's just one issue.
Right.
And my response is, well, name 5 issues to me, combine them together, any 5 issues you want, and I guarantee you those 5 issues won't carry the weight of that one issue. When I go and vote, and this is what I've been trying to tell people, when I go and vote, I don't vote for what I think is best for me. I don't vote what I think is best for my culture. I vote what I think is most important to God. And if we vote what's most important to God, then I can't imagine there being another issue even close to being as important.
Very good. Thomas, you want to add something to the conversation here?
I think the key is, and kind of what Harold just said, is that there's a lot of different issues, and people, and that's typically what happens, and even what I've seen even just today, when it comes down to abortion. I think the exact language is, I'm not going to be held in slavery to this one issue. There's all these other issues, and somebody was very, very vocal about this even today. And, and it's not to diminish the importance of other issues,
Right.
but in that concept of graded absolutism, we have, when we have a conflict, like if you can only do one thing, God lets us know which one we should pursue. He lets us know what's more important.
Right.
And I think in terms of the right to life, that is extremely important. And that's why I think even, in our country's history, we once said, well, there's the economy and then there's slavery. And people would say, well, the economy is more important. And we would disagree that, human freedom is more important. It's not that the economy is unimportant, but we're going to have to do this thing and then figure out the economy from there.
That's right.
And I think that's the issue when it comes to this right of life. And I think people get mad at Christians. They're like, you're so stuck on that. And part of what I in conversations with other people, I ask them, why aren't you more stuck on this issue of legalized murder for the most vulnerable group in our society?
Right.
And I think that's why this is coming to the forefront. And I think it is, it's a political issue because it's part of party platforms, but it's a moral issue. It's an ethical issue. It's a worldview issue. What is a human being, and is it worth, are all humans worth saving?
Right.
And I think that's what complicates it, this worldview and values issue in our country right now.
So let me try to clarify this a little more. There are essentially three premises in a biblical argument for graded absolutes. And this is all in my dad's book, Christian Ethics, page 100 to 115, for those who are interested in reading more about this. Number one, there are higher and lower moral laws. Number two, there are unavoidable moral conflicts. And number three, no guilt is imputed for the unavoidable. Now, with these principles in mind, let me just kind of explain what we as Christians then should see as easy for us to choose. In other words, there's certain things that should be easy as we look through scripture, that we should choose certain things over other things. For example, love for God over love for humankind, right? Love for God is more important than loving our parents, as Luke 14:26 indicates. Or obeying God is more important than obeying the government, right? Worship of God is higher than any commandment of government. And that was something that Daniel practiced in Daniel chapter 3. No governmental law has, the right to tell us that we can't privately pray. We should definitely disobey any law that keeps us from being able to pray privately. Or if a government commands a believer by its decrees to participate in idolatry, they obviously should disobey that. So there's certain things that are very clear, right? Mercy over truth, that sometimes it's better to lie to save a life. Now, with this principle of graded absolutism in the back of your mind, I just wonder, our guests, do you agree with Pastor John Piper's statement? He came out with a statement and he basically said that, I don't like what Trump is doing, and I don't like Biden. I'm not going to vote for anyone. So what I'm wondering is, do you think we should follow Pastor Piper's example as followers of Christ and not vote for anyone for president in this election? And I'd like to start with Dr. Felder. What is your perspective on this?
I think you said it when you opened up, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yeah.
Our participation in the government and voting for who we should vote for, and voting in particular, is us rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar.
Yes.
We are commanded to be salt and light. You cannot be salt and light by not participating.
Right.
To not give to not vote is basically voting for whoever wins.
Right.
And that makes me think, that would he had not voted for Lincoln on this platform of freeing the slaves because of that view?
Yeah.
It's something. There's got to be something wrong with it. Now, I respect Piper. I mean, I definitely respect him, but I have to disagree with him on this, because any view that would tie my hands
Right.
from giving my Christian input and being salt and light, to me, just seems fundamentally wrong.
Yeah. Devin, Melissa, what about you guys? What do you think?
Just real quick, Pastor Piper, I remember there was a video that went viral back when President Obama was in charge, and he called President Obama out. It was on a Sanctity of Life Sunday, and it was one of the most powerful videos I've ever seen. And he's saying, you don't want your daughters running around with condoms in their pocketbooks. You want them to be pure. You want them to be chaste. You don't want abortion for your daughter. He was a very strong fighter against abortion. He definitely had a view. And I know he's still against abortion, but it's just surprising, I guess, to me to see that again, this moral equivalence. I mean, I get that President Trump is definitely kind of rude and bombastic, etc., but it's such a far different.
Right.
Well, and when we look at the political process and we look at the primaries, we basically, the American people as a whole, it comes down to these pretty much these two candidates. I mean, they're third-party candidates usually as well, but these are the choices that we have, right? So I think that's an encouragement for Christians to run for office rather than feeling that politics is, kind of the devil's game there. And when we look at the sheer number of abortions in this country right now, even though it's on the decline, we're talking 72,000 lives that monthly in this country that are lost to abortion, children who cannot speak for themselves. And we actually have the opportunity to be a part of saving children proactively through our vote.
Yes.
So why would we not, as believers, take that opportunity to be a part of helping to save lives rather than sitting out?
Yes. Let me add something else to the mix here. What do you think of John Piper's statement? And I'm going to read these two quotes. These are the ones that kind of stood out to me as I was reading this article. He says, "I find it bewildering that Christians can be so sure that greater damage will be done by bad judges, bad laws, and bad policies than is being done by the culture infecting spread of the gangrene of sinful self-exaltation and boasting and strife stirring." I think he's referring to Donald Trump and the way he goes about communicating with others. And then he says, "It's baffling to assume that pro-abortion policies kill more people than a culture saturating pro-self-pride." Now, is it true that more lives will be lost because of pride as opposed to pro-abortion policies? What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely not. And whatever you may say about Donald Trump has the ability now to change, to repent, to become humble, to become.
By the way, we had Dr. Land last week. Dr. Land is part of the religious panel, and he told us that he and others have noticed that there is a change in the way he has treated his wife. And people have noticed that. So, and anyway, I didn't know that. I never have heard that. And so, a lot of the things that he's accused of, it happened 10 years, 20 years, from.
Well, what questions too is
Wait, I can't hear you, Melissa. You're going to have to.
One of the questions that I have as well is, our presidents, have they just become stubborn, prideful, that kind of thing? I think about President Obama. If we're, in recent history, I mean, I found his character to be very prideful. Maybe not in a boisterous way, but in the way that his policies were, in the way that he talked about Christians, clinging to your guns and your Bibles and this sort of thing. So pride is not something that is new to the presidential Oval Office at all with this president.
Good observation. Okay, here's another question. How do you determine, based on this principle of graded absolutes, how do you determine whether environmental protection policies or conservative policies like pro-life are more important in deciding who you should vote for? Now, that's open to anyone who wants to take a stab at that one. How do you determine that? Because I know there are a lot of people on the left that are very concerned about environmental protection policies, okay? And that's one value. But then also pro-life is another important value. So how do you determine which one is more important?
The science is still hotly debated on the kind of the global warming and what kind of energy to use.
Right.
Science is not debated about when life begins, is it? Right?
And I would like to add, so to the climate, the people who are environmentalists were very concerned. What is their number one fear?
Yeah.
Is that we will die?
Right.
Okay, well, but so so you think it's more important for people to die now as opposed to a death that may happen in the future? According to Al Gore, his prediction, we should have been dead 5 years ago.
Right.
So we don't know what the future may hold.
Exactly. Thomas, would you like to add something here?
I'm going to refrain from talking about climate change in general. My undergrad is in mathematics, and I understand like the math behind it, and to say that it's well, all the scientists, major scientists, no, it comes down to, yes, we should be responsible.
Right.
Yes, and I think that there's also the element of we're not having to choose, do we keep babies alive and do we fix the climate? Well, we
Okay.
can do both. But if we're going to kill babies and then we're going to try to change the climate, that's you're losing.
Right.
But on the issue, if we can save babies and
Right.
then save the climate,
Right.
then because I don't think I know of any conservatives that, if y'all remember, and I might date myself, going back to the Captain Planet TV show, I don't think we have politicians that are wringing their hands like pollution, that just, that's how it's sometimes portrayed. And so I think sometimes it's a little bit of a false dilemma as well. And I would say let's promote both. We don't have to choose between the two.
Yes.
So I think that's why if we in terms of what's the most expedient,
Right.
I would say that the babies who are dying now versus those who might die in the future.
Yeah. Melissa, were you wanting to say something? Oh, I
The
can't.
whole purpose of preserving the climate, like Dr. Harold Felder said, would be found in some sort of ethic in the value of human life and preserving life and making life and creating a better quality for life. So again, it's very contradictory to determine or to think that it's okay to eliminate human life from its conception, but yet, the desire to preserve life through these policies of environmental protection.
Very good. So Dr. Felder, let me ask you this question. You, I know, refer to yourself as a Black conservative. What does that mean? And how did that come about? I know you could probably talk for an hour on that, but give us the short version.
Okay, so I am going to make an announcement that this show is me coming out. I'm coming out of the closet.
All right.
If everybody else can come out of the closet, I can come out of the closet too. I'm coming out of the closet as a Black conservative. And what I mean by that is that I believe in a transcendent morality. I'm a patriot. I believe in a capitalist free market. But I also believe as a Black, as an African American, I also reject a lot of the notions that that my Blackness is a reason for me to as an excuse to fail, or as an excuse for why we're not what we need to be. I don't use my Blackness as an excuse. So that's what I mean when I say that I'm a Black conservative and I'm out right now. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out, y'all. But how I came about this, believe it or not, when I was an atheist, I was actually the first time I voted for Ronald Reagan. And then I was an atheist when I did this, but his policy just made sense to me. And when I became a believer, it just made even more sense when I started understanding the moral positions of Christianity. It just seemed like the Republican or conservative movement was more in line with my biblical values, and I never changed from that. I just became more invested in conservatism. And the longer I live, the more I see, the more invested I become, because now I see what's going on with the Democratic Party is that it is, in my view, incompatible with Christianity. And this is what I mean by that. And I've been meaning to write an article about this for 6 months and I haven't done it.
Okay.
Because they embrace things like moral relativism, because they embrace things like pluralism, multiculturalism, all of these things are incompatible with the Bible. Now, I'm not saying liberals are not compatible with Christianity. I'm saying that the views that are embraced by liberalism, in my view, are incompatible with Christianity, which is one of the reasons why I'm conservative and why I'm a Republican.
Okay, thank you. How about Melissa, how about you answer this question? Why do most Blacks overwhelmingly support the Democrat Party?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's just that's cultural, and it's the expectation. I voted Democrat my first time voting. I didn't even look at I honestly didn't even look at the platforms. I just voted straight Democrat, and that's what you're kind of expected to do. And so, and I think that there's, as we look at just what's happened in history with some of the policies with the Civil Rights Act and things of that nature, some of those social programs that were designed to help Black America, that the Democratic Party brought in, they've actually, it's hurt our society, hurt our families in many ways. And so when you start to dig and look at these things, even, of course, I'm a Christian first. And when I look at my Christian values and what lines up the most with that, I would lean conservative, obviously. And then when I look at just my culture, Black culture in our community, I see where Democratic policies have torn down our family system and our structures that have made us strong. And so I think it's insanity to continue to participate in that platform that undermines our family structures when it endorses abortion, when abortion is the #1 killer in our community. When you add up all the deaths from every other cause, I mean, natural causes, suicide, murders, car accidents, it's still 20,000 less than what than the deaths by abortion of Black people in our country every year. So I just think that the policies of the Democratic Party totally undermine the sanctity of human life, of human life in general, but definitely of Black life and of the Black family and the Black structure that makes us independent and strong as a people.
Okay, Dr. Felder, what is your view specifically of the Democrat Party?
Okay, I'm probably going to get in trouble here. But I'm out, right? Might as well just go for it. So here's my view is that I have been, when the George Floyd thing happened, I sort of went into my shell, trying to figure out where I stood as a believer.
Okay.
And when I do that, I tend to do research. And I started doing research and I started reading Black conservatives. And what I discovered is that during slavery, all of the slave owners were basically Democrats. The Republican Party was founded for the purpose of the abolition of slavery. So it was actually the Republican Party that was responsible for a lot of the amendments that gave Blacks, the freedom, the ability to vote. All of these things were done by Republicans.
Right.
So what happened is that during FDR period, and a lot of Blacks thought that the policies of the New Deal would help them. And so a lot of Blacks became Democrat.
Right.
I say about 75%. Then when Lyndon B. Johnson came out with his that vision of America with the whole welfare state, then the other 25% basically came. So it is It is my view that the Democratic Party never gave up its racist history. It is my view that the Democratic Party has changed the plantation from the old antebellum plantation to a plantation of entitlement. This is why you only hear from them every 4 years when it's time to vote.
Right.
And it is why their policies never actually promote helping Black people. Never actually helps promote Black people. It is designed to keep us coming back for more. It is designed to keep us coming back to the slave master. I said it. That is my view of the Democratic Party. Now I know I'm gonna catch some flack for that, but I'm out the closet now.
All right. All right. So let me give you a little perspective about the next set of questions we're going to talk about. As we look at what's changed politically, like in the last 20, 30 years, let's keep in mind what happened during the 60s, 70s, and 80s with the major Supreme Court decisions. So let me just kind of review some of this. 1961, secular humanism was recognized as a religion protected by First Amendment. 1962, state required devotional prayers banned from public schools. It was a state required up until 1962 that devotional prayers be allowed, and they were banned. In 1963, state required devotional Bible reading was forbidden in the schools. 1973, that was Roe versus Wade. In 1980, the Supreme Court said no to the 10 Commandments being posted in schools. In 2005, it said no to the 10 Commandments being posted in our courts. In 2015, they legalized same-sex marriage. So you can kind of see what's happened, right? In the last 30, 40, 50 years. And to cap it all off, 75% of Americans reject the notion of absolute truth. And it's even higher among our youth. Now, with that in mind, I don't know if you're familiar with Jenna Ellis's book, The Legal Basis for a Moral Constitution. Jenna Ellis is was an attorney, or is an attorney for President Donald Trump. And she wrote this book, The Legal Basis for a Moral Constitution. And she's a very strong evangelical Christian who I've met a couple times. And she actually attended ISCA a few years ago, and I got a chance to meet her. But listen to what she says about what's happening during this time period that was the cause of the moral decline in our country. She says, the open embrace of the sexual revolution was completely inconsistent with divine law morality. As a consequence, in order to liberate ourselves from the commonly understood restraint of moral law, our civil law had to begin to reflect a morality other than divine law. And then she goes on to talk about in her book how divine law was eventually replaced with social contract theory under the guise of women's rights, birth control, abortion, and unplanned pregnancy alternatives to motherhood. And that became the pragmatic response. Now, why did we overthrow God in traditional ethics? Well, Jenna says it's because it interfered with our sexual freedom. So the bottom line is this: if you don't believe in objective truth, man becomes the measure of all things, and generic mankind, both male and female, can decide what they want. So maybe just comment a little bit about what I just said, that anyone could offer some feedback about. Do you agree with her, or why do you agree? If you do, why do you agree with her?
I think I'll jump in real quick. I think, this goes back to, I think one of the issues we've been talking about is, as you began by talking about and giving the statistics, all the kind of bad things that are going on, and we're trying to decide, well, do we keep babies alive, or do we lower our emissions? So what we've come into in this world, and again, a lot of these statistics I just have to say are before my time. So I'm on the cusp of the Gen X millennial generation, but even in my short time, we've seen like these worldview issues, and we have competing worldviews, and it goes back to asking that question, what is the good? And all these political questions, where our goal is to seek what is the good. And I think I can't remember if it's Harold or who said it, but I don't vote for myself or for my community. I vote. I want to vote what God, what the good is.
Right.
And as a culture, we've lost that, and so we're no longer in two political parties that are saying, okay, what's the best way to get to the good? We're now going different directions. Once we've disconnected from the religious and the moral and truth and all those components, we don't have that common ground anymore. We can't agree. And so instead of things like the golden rule, we end up having like Nietzsche's will to power.
Right.
It's whoever has the power can exert their will, and that is good. And so I think that's we're seeing the fruition of that. We're seeing it, like people have just like, man, why is it that they're so division? Let's just get along. We have conflicting worldviews. They're incompatible, and I think people are just, even those who don't study worldviews and things, they're feeling it. And I think that's what's causing some, especially even in the church, to wake up all of a sudden like, wait a minute,
Right.
Something is severely wrong.
Right. So Dr. Felder, let me ask this next question. We've talked in the past about the difference between civil rights and particular organizations like Black Lives Matter organization. And many of us may not necessarily agree with that organization, although we may know that as Christians, we certainly need to do a better job to support the Black community. And I've always felt, and I've mentioned this before, that the evangelical church and my father's generation should have done more. They should have embraced Martin Luther King and what he was trying to do. And I always regret that. I've said that in the past as well, that my father's generation of evangelical leaders didn't do more to help the Black Christian community, especially, and Martin Luther King in particular. I've always regretted that. And I don't want us to repeat the same mistakes currently, whatever those are. So in your opinion, what are some practical ways that evangelical churches today, I would say white evangelical churches, should be supportive of Black people, even if they don't necessarily support Black Lives Matter as an organization? Do you have any suggestions for those of us who are leaders within the evangelical white church today? Although my church has some Blacks, but a lot of these white churches only have a few, you know what I mean? They could do a better job. I certainly think that.
I think as far as
rating.
within the church itself, I mean, I think if the church looks more like the world, then it would be more open to some African Americans.
Yes.
I remember I visited a church when I was looking for a church here in Charlotte. I visited a church and I sat in the back, and I'm not exaggerating. I would say there were 2,000 people, and I was the only Black person.
Oh.
And just because, and then when you looked up on the stage and you saw everyone in the choir, and you saw the deacons, and there was not one face of color there. I just sort of felt like it was not a place for me. And so if we want the world to look at us, then we need to look more like the world.
Yes.
And also, if we want to make a difference in the Black community, I think that there are definitely things that we can do to make a difference in the Black community. And my church is one that's doing, I think, a good job.
Right.
We partner with local schools.
Yes.
And we developed that inroad into the schools. So then the schools are actually very receptive. I mean, we give them supplies and we're there for events and stuff like that. And we have after school programs for them. Yeah. These type of things that make the church open, or to make the community more open to the church.
Right.
But if you're trying to also make a difference in the Black community, one of the things, a couple of things that can be done is some of the programs that the churches could get involved in. For instance, I think something as simple as basic reading. If an African American man isn't reading grade level by third grade, chances are is he has a high percentage that he's going to end up in jail. As a matter of fact, they determine how many jails they're going to build based on the literacy rate of African American males in the third grade. Something as simple as a reading class.
Yeah.
Or in my church, we have an entrepreneurial class for, my church is 99.9% Black. And we have a entrepreneurship class so that young African American men can say, I don't have to be a rapper. I don't have to play ball in order to be successful. There are other avenues for me. There are other options for me. And I think and these are the things we can do to help us as a people so that we can stand on our own 2 feet. This is teaching us to fish instead of giving a handout.
Yes. Amen. So, well, Dr. Felder, I want to mention that you and I have just agreed recently, we're going to team up and we're going to develop an evangelism methodology for the African American community that I'm going to donate my time, just team up with you to go to, different churches and just try to help people better understand what they believe and why they believe it and how to communicate that. And you're going to teach me how to do that in an African American culture. So I'm going to learn a lot from you. I can see that. So
one of the things, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the things I'm doing now is I'm actually dean at the Bible Institute, and I'm teaching a class called Urban Apologetics. And what I'm doing in that class is I'm teaching not only the 12 points that your father taught me,
right,
which is the foundation for it, but I'm also teaching African Americans that the Bible and Christianity is completely compatible with them. That's why I wrote the book, The African American Guide to the Bible. I deal with the Black presence in the Bible. I dispel all the arguments that the Bible is racist, that God is racist. So I'm demonstrating to people that this is their religion. I mean, Christianity flourished in Africa hundreds of years before it was even accepted in Rome.
right.
So this is the religion of all people, and that's one of the things I'm trying to communicate to people, trying to get out to people, and with your help,
Yes,
we're going to make it happen.
Yes, Melissa, we only have time for just your last response. So
yes, our church is very involved in school as well in our neighborhood. We try to incorporate and Winthrop talk about these issues about race as well.
Right.
I had Dr. Felder come and actually do a whole event last year on his Christianity, the White Man's Religion. I totally agree with Felder. In each community, you can look for opportunities right there in your circle where you can make an impact right there without having to align yourself with these bigger political, social justice movements that are anti-God and anti-Christ. This right where the church is, just looking for those opportunities right there to make relationships is what's going to change, that's going to change the perception of the church in that way.
Amen. And Melissa, when I spoke at your church, I was just so impressed. This is one of the best, I would say, integrated churches that I've ever been to. So I was so blessed to come to your church and to meet a lot of those people. I was just thinking, this is what heaven is going to be like. We're all going to be together in one room,
And the majority of our church, we're a small church. We're less than 100 people. And we have a Black pastor with a multicultural church. And the majority of our members are what would be considered of senior citizen age. So you're talking in South Carolina, white, Black, and Asian and Filipino people of different ethnicities coming together.
Right. Hey guys, we're out of time, but let me just kind of summarize what my father said we should keep in mind as we decide who to vote for in this election. So I'm just going to name some things. We don't have time to talk about this. He said that we should vote for those who keep under God in the pledge, those who promote reading the 10 Commandments in school, that promote teaching creationism in the school, that promotes class prayer, that teach God-given morals in school, that support civil rights for all citizens, that appoint good judges who will correctly interpret the Constitution, that maintain a strong national security, that support pro-life and pro-family issues. In brief, those who restore our lost freedoms. In closing, I just want to kind of give this quote. Edmund Burke, you may know, said this: "The only thing necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing." Now, my father said it more practically. He said it this way: all you need to do to allow evil to prevail is don't register, don't vote your conscience. And I think that's pretty good advice. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Felder and Devin and Melissa and Thomas. Appreciate all the feedback. Thanks for joining us tonight from all of us at NGIM. Good night.
Good night.